Could you imagine being stuck in the same place for 38 years? Hey guys, welcome to You, Me, and JC. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm so glad you're watching. My name is McKenna. I like to come to you guys every Monday with a word that I feel like God has dropped in my heart. If you have not already, don't forget to press the like, subscribe, and bell for notifications so you're notified every time one of these videos is uploaded. This month, our focus is healing for the month of May. May also happens to be the month of mental health awareness, so I felt like those kind of like coincided. In our last video, we talked about how we would be diving into some of the Bible stories that revolved around healing. And this week, we're going to talk about the healing at the pool. So this story takes place in John chapter 5, verses 1 through 8. And it says, "Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in the Aramaic is called Bethsheba, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, 'Do you want to get well?' 'Sir,' the invalid replied, 'I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. When I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me.' Then Jesus said to him, 'Get up, pick up your mat, and walk.' And once the man was cured, he picked up his mat and walked." So, the first part I want to talk about is, could you imagine being stuck in the same place for 38 years? In this story, it's like physical, where he's not able to move, but I'm not even old enough to be stuck in the same place for 38 years. But if I was stuck in the same place my entire life, that would suck. I guess the revelation that I'm referring to is more so, we get stuck in our patterns. You know, like how people say, that's just how I am. Most of us aren't born with our coping mechanisms or trauma responses. We've developed them as we've gone through life. So there are people that are probably stuck in bitterness for 38 years, or self-hate for 38 years, or insecurity for 38 years. Those might not be physical, but they can definitely keep you in the same place. So in that, I feel like Jesus' approach was a little different, because he's like, do you want to be healed or not? And I think he asks us that question sometimes. Like, we'll come to God and be like, Lord, heal us. Lord, I don't want to be this way. Lord, I don't want to deal with this pain. Lord, I don't want to be this person. And he'll ask us, well, do you want to be well? And we'll give him excuses. Like how he's like, well, every time I try and get down in the water, someone else gets down there ahead of me. It goes on later to say to, like, he tells the man to turn from sin or he'll end up sick again, which I think is important, because God does have the power to remove like the hardness that we surround ourselves with. Like, we all give ourselves like a shell of protection, which becomes the bitterness or the hate, or even if it's dysfunction, the idea of feeling we're less deserving. Like, we'll allow ourselves to get trapped in those. There's no other word for them. They're literally trauma responses or coping mechanisms, defense mechanisms. We'll allow ourselves to identify with that and like just put it on as a label. Anxiety, depression. But what I kind of get from this story is like, it's a decision. Like, when do you get fed up with yourself of how you've been dealing with things? When do you say enough is enough? A lot of us just wait for God to make these big moves. And God could be moving. He's like, you don't see anything because I'm waiting on you to move. And you're so stuck in your ways. We miss out on a lot just getting trapped in how we've chosen to get through life. Because I very well believe that in some instances, God is able to take whatever has kept us captive away immediately. But we have to want it. We have to want to be free, which is why Jesus said, turn from sin or you'll be sick again. Because I feel like it's very human of us to get healed, but go right back to what hurt us. Like, if jumping off a cliff made me break my leg and my leg was healed, I don't think I would just run and jump off a cliff again. But if I allow someone to completely destroy my self-esteem or my self-worth, and I go to God about it and he restores it, very well could go right back to who made me feel that way. Or go right back to the things that made me feel that way. So last week, the story we talked about was the story of Naaman and him dipping 7 times, because healing is a process. But this, I feel like, is more so just about the fact of making the decision. Do you want to be healed? It's a choice. Because it's not that God can't do it, but he still gives us the freedom of choice. Which is why Jesus asked him, do you want to be well? And then what the healing process from there isn't always the same, but it very well could be like, do you want to be well? Do you no longer want to be bitter? You can tell the Lord yes, and he can take it away. But once he does that, what are you going to do with it? Like, that's a question that I ask myself. What am I going to do with it? I think none of us really process that when we're thinking about, oh, I don't want to be like this anymore. Oh, I don't want to feel this way about myself anymore. Oh, I don't want this to hurt me anymore. But are you taking the thoughts captive? Because anything in life, when you're made well, you're responsible for maintaining it. For instance, the biggest thing I struggle with, as like just an example, being consistent with working out and just improving my health. And I won't even say my consistency struggle is with working out. Because once I start going to the gym, I enjoy going to the gym. But I always end up where I started again because I never change my diet. I never change what I consume, which is how I keep ending back up at the weight that I worked hard to get off. Because I go back to the same thing that quote unquote hurt me. Healing is a decision, and it also requires discipline. And discipline is shown in like the form of boundaries and reading your word and knowing what God says about you and building your confidence in who God is and not necessarily in who you are. And when you become confident in who God is, you become confident in who you are because he made you. So take the time to make the decision. Make the decision to choose healing. Identify what you do as coping mechanisms. Identify what your trauma responses are. Identify what your defensive mechanisms are. Even if you write them out and work through it. Make the decision to surrender it to God. Let him make you well. And then do your work to not go back to what you were just delivered from. Okay? So thank you so much for tuning in this week. And we'll wrap it up next week with one more story. I hope you guys have a good week. And I will see you later. Bye.